Welcome to the Stokastic MLB Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Adam Scherer. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by So Rare MLB, which is a collection of digital trading cards and an NFT-based free-to-play baseball game. While you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Adam, I'm going to start off rather than just asking you how it's going. We got a nice note in our comments yesterday after the video, which honestly, I don't usually read the comments onto the videos after they're over, especially if it's a live stream. I don't like go back and read what people say, but this one was sent to me in Slack, so I wanted to read it off. Tommy David Walker says, "Thanks, guys. I've learned more about DFS baseball listening to Adam in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 5 years between watching this show daily and using the tools." And then this is where he put in parentheses, "You too, Neil. I've had much more success than normal for me." That is really awesome to hear. Tommy David Walker, thank you for that nice note.
Maybe I should go back and start listening to myself.
Yeah, that would be. I should listen to you too. I do this whole show with you, and as people in the audience have noted, I don't usually listen to you. I usually, I try to. I'd like to say that I'm listening to you, but I'm usually like interacting with chat or like doing other stuff, and I end up not really listening. And then later I hear, "Oh, Adam's home run pick hit," and I'm like, I have no idea who Adam's home run pick was today. Apparently, it hit yesterday though.
Yeah, not off the pitcher I called it against, but it did hit.
Okay. I don't believe my Shohei Ohtani. Last time I checked, Shohei Ohtani had not hit a home run yesterday.
I think he doubled. He had a good game, but he didn't homer.
Yeah, so that was bummer. But good to get 1 out of 2. If we bat 500 for the year, getting the home run picks, I think I would take that. But yeah, I like that shout out to start the show, and I agree. It's probably been 5 years at this point since I discovered what was Awesemo at the time. Maybe 4 years since I discovered Awesemo. But for me, I was watching another channel, and then this show just came on. Like the YouTube algorithm spit out Awesemo at me, and I was hooked immediately. I was like, these guys talk about DFS better than anybody else in the game. So I'm with you. I think you can learn a lot on this channel. And I think even the picks, the other channels, I think, give a lot more picks than we do. But I think even the picks that you give, that this channel gives, are as good as anybody in the business. And then you add in some of the DFS elements. I think it's a great place to learn how to play DFS. But enough about that. Adam, how was your yesterday?
It was fine. So, and you're going to know exactly what I mean. I profited like, I don't know, $150 or something, which, like, obviously it's nice to profit when you're playing tournaments. You're losing a lot more often than you're winning. But then the days that you like slightly profit, it almost just like pisses you off more because you actually got a lot of stuff right and then just like made $100. Like, yesterday was one of those days where like I didn't like really the teams that I played. I ended up with like a good amount of Kansas City, good amount of the Angels, good amount of the Brewers. You tell me that those teams scored 12, 9, and 6 runs or whatever it was at pretty low ownership, and I assume that I at least have a sweat, which I didn't. So it was frustrating, but I made money, which can't go broke doing that. So that's good at least.
I refer to that as DFS blue balls. You just got close to hitting, and it just makes you that much more frustrated. And you're like, all right, back on tomorrow. When is the next slate? When can I start again?
Right.
It's a great analogy when you really think about it.
I think I finished top 10 on the like 6-10 early slate for MLB and on the night slate, but it wasn't like neither one was a good top 10. It was like 7th and 8th or something.
Yeah, where you're like, great, I broke even. Could have done so close, so much more. I see Tommy David Walker, who left the comment, is in chat. So thank you, Tommy, for joining us. I don't think I've seen Tommy in chat before, but good to see you here today. And then Tommy said MLB lineup generator. I don't know who he's asking this question to, but yeah, we do have MLB lineup generator. I'm actually going to pull that up later. I think when we talk about MLB lineup generator, it looks like you can build basically any kind of stack that we talk about. You can't force in like a 5-2 stack, but you can do 5-0 stack. So really cool product. We will talk about MLB lineup generator a little bit later on. Of course, we just had Michael yesterday in here telling us how he had got 3rd place out of 30,000 using lineup generator. I think that was for NBA, he said, but MLB lineup generator, I'm sure will be absolutely great. So we will talk about that a little bit later on. How many games do we have on this slate? It's a 10-game slate. Man, this is a big slate here. So I suppose we should get into it. Adam, do you have any overarching thoughts before we jump in game by game?
No, doesn't look like there's anything total wise that's like insane. It looks like everything's between like 7 and 9.5. So no.
All right. Well, then let's jump in game by game. We've got to start it off. Oakland at the New York Yankees. Drew Rucinski on the mound for the A's. Clark Schmidt for the Yankees. Any interest in either of these pitchers, Adam?
If you need to pay down at SP2 on DraftKings, I think Schmidt is okay. He's 6K. We actually have him 6th in top 2 pitcher percentage. Speaks to kind of the lack of quality arms on this slate, but we do have some pretty good pitching on the slate. So a little surprised he's as high as he is. But at 6K, we've seen him really struggle with power this year, but we've also seen him be good at getting strikeouts. Now you're facing an Oakland team that doesn't have a lot of power. You can strike them out. They got to Nestor Cortez yesterday, which was one reason I didn't have better teams than I did. But at 6K, I don't mind going back to some Schmidt here. 25.7% strikeout percentage so far this season. It's hard to get much of a gauge on what to expect from him because most of his previous MLB time was as a reliever. But the strikeouts have been there, not walking a lot of guys, which is good to see. Only 6.5%. Does have a 5.12 FIP because when guys are hitting the ball, they are hitting it hard. He's allowed 2.15 home runs per 9 innings so far this season. So again, it's not a safe matchup, and you do get a positive park shift for these A's bats. But you have a 3 flat implied run total facing a pitcher who's $6,000 and has pretty good strikeout stuff. That guy's going to show up as an SP2. Rucinski on the other side, I don't see any real reason to get to. Not a great matchup against the Yankees. Could have Judge back today as well, it looks like, based on the projected lineup I'm looking at. I know I had seen something about him returning soon recently, so that would obviously make the Yankees look even better. I don't really think you need to get through Rucinski. I do think that Schmidt just looks like a good value. We have him with a 27% chance of being a top 2 value. There's only one pitcher on the slate that is higher than that, and that's Brandon Pfaadt, who is $4,500 for some absolutely unknown reason. A highly regarded pitching prospect is essentially minimum salary. Other than that, Schmidt is far and away the best top 2 value, so just looks good in the spot from a value standpoint.
Okay. I see. So what started the talk about MLB lineup generators, Andy Millman said, playing around with the MLB lineup generator. This is fantastic. So that started the conversation. It sounds like Andy said it just, did that just come out this morning? I did not, apparently haven't been tracking like when lineup generator came out. I actually think that I'll probably use it for MLB. The only time I've used one of our lineup generators in the past is PGA, because for NBA, it just doesn't like work with the way I build lineups in NBA, but for MLB, I think it makes a lot of sense. We'll talk about MLB lineup generator later, but do you have any idea when it came out, Adam?
I thought it had been out, but I don't.
Maybe I'm misreading the conversation. There's a lot going on. So yeah, I thought it had been out, but I have not checked it out yet. I'm going to check it out today. We'll show you on the stream. I'll pull it up and we can take a look at what there is going on in the MLB lineup generator. But for the way I play MLB DFS, because there's no like late swap concerns, it makes a lot more sense for me than NBA. So yeah,
yeah,
sure.
NBA gets tricky because like you have to have time for everything on the back end to update when you get somebody rolled out 10 minutes before lock.
Right, exactly. So it's just a little bit of a tougher thing to do, especially when you're playing a lot of lineups. But MLB, it feels like it's like the perfect product to have a lineup generator. So I'll definitely be checking that out. Probably actually using that one.
And I know Ben has said that it's perfect for PGA, and
Yep.
MLB is kind of similar to PGA in that it's just a bunch of random shit, and you're just like throwing darts. Which is basically why Ben says it's good for PGA. Is like you're just kind of throwing darts at guys and hoping it works out. Not so much, correlation wise. Baseball, obviously, you have the correlation with stacking, but trying to get a team that's going to hit a bunch of home runs is not entirely different from trying to find golfers that are actually going to make the cut and do well in a tournament.
But it's like it's going to balance you appropriately using lineup generator in terms of like your exposure, the ownership of your lineup, that kind of stuff. So that's the nice thing is that the construction is going to work out well, even for PGA, which again to me, like you said, feels like I'm just throwing shit at the wall. But it'll at least balance out like your ownership in PGA lineups. And but for
PGA,
MLB,
my most profitable sport, simply because I quickly decided I didn't think I was actually good at it, despite having my biggest ever win.
That was very wise of you. PGA is the only sport that I'm down like $60,000 playing PGA DFS. I did have one sweat once where it was like on Sunday, 2 hours left in the day, like halfway through the back nine or whatever you even call it. I don't play golf, but I had like 5 of my 6 golfers like combined to have like an 85% chance of winning, according to some sim I was looking at. I think Data Golf maybe, and then they just all shit the bed. Like I was winning $200,000. It was like everything was looking good, and then they just every single one of my golfers was horrible. None of them won.
Golf is like every other sport for me. It's like when I have those teams that I'm like, wow, this is a really, really good team. As long as like nothing crazy happens, those teams don't win,
Right.
and then you win when it's just like some random team. Like I remember, I guess it was probably a couple years ago, being in line for like I don't know, a 50K or 100K win, and it was just like, all right, I need Dustin Johnson like not to like go birdie to close out this tournament, and he hits his tee shot in the sand, and I'm like, okay, that's a good start, and then he just holes out from the bunker from like 150 yards or something for birdie, and then so I end up losing there. But then I get my biggest win where like I wasn't even sweating anything. I just look at my phone that afternoon and I'm like, I'm winning money. And I text Ben like, hey, can I win this tournament? And he's like, maybe if Lanto Griffin does something. And as he does it, like as he said that, Griffin eagled, and I just go on to win with a team that I didn't even know existed until then.
Is that the most fun for you when you win at sports that you shouldn't win at, just because you control everybody who like spends a lot of time on it?
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. Plus, in theory, I think I'm better at those sports. Like I think if I put the time into golf, I could probably be really good at it, but I just haven't.
Interesting. I don't know that I could be good at golf. I think I just don't really understand the game where there is no correlation and it's just like ownership based.
Yeah, in theory, I think you should still be able to get an edge at those games just because people are so projection driven these days.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. Like the higher projected golfers go over own, so it's similar to like every other type of DFS, I guess. In a lot of ways, it's just it feels more difficult to me. Maybe that's just because I also don't know the sport at all. Like, don't know how to like have any kind of opinion other than like,
Right.
okay, according to the top golfers tool, this golfer is over own, this golfer is under own, which is probably the right way to approach it. Just using the tools like I do with MLB.
Yeah, that's I mean, to me, the hardest thing in DFS is always evaluating like, am I making good lineups? And when it's a sport like golf that I know nothing about, that does make it more difficult because it'll be like, well, did I make good lineups or did I just play a guy that I thought was under owned but realistically had no chance of doing well?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, nice. Kevin says winning 200,000 until you weren't. Yep, exactly. And then I think I ended up losing. I might have won like $1,000 on this slate. I think I might have got like 19th place or something and finished making money. But yeah, it's one of those sports. All right, Oakland, New York Yankees. Adam, any interest in these bats?
Yeah, definitely interest in the Yankees here going up against a Korean League pitcher in Drew Rucinski. I don't think he's actually Korean. Could be. I don't know. But his most recent professional baseball experience was in the KBO. Hasn't pitched in the majors in a while. Certainly looks like a good spot for the Yankees in his limited time so far this year. Rucinski's been really good at limiting power to righties, but you're talking 91 total pitches thrown to righties, 75 to lefties. So essentially nothing we can take away from this. But he has only struck righties out at a 7% clip. Lefties have a 241 expected ISO, 10.5% K percentage so far. He mostly just looks like somebody that isn't going to be very good in the major leagues. If you get Judge back, clearly that makes this lineup look better. But Volpe leading off is going to be a good shortstop option. You have Rizzo with the short porch and right against a righty that doesn't miss bats. That's going to look good. LeMahieu, Torres, Bader are all fine. Jake Bauers should be in the lineup at minimum salary from the left side. The only thing I wish the Yankees had was more left-handed power, but when your right-handed power includes guys like Aaron Judge, you can't be too picky. So Yankees look good here. As far as top stack tool goes and ownership, the Yankees are coming in third in top stack percentage at 8% ownership, 11.5% chance of being the top value stack. So I actually suggest they're probably going a little bit under owned, all things considered. They do have the highest stack score on the slate, just ahead of the White Sox against Jordan Lyles. So yeah, the Yankees look good. On the Oakland side, I don't know really what to make of them. Like, I find them interesting because they are facing a pitcher in Schmidt that gives up a lot of power and they're getting out of Oakland. But also, if you just, make it a habit to not stack teams with 3 implied run totals, you probably do fine. So I'm just a little surprised how low the implied run total is. But JJ Bleday probably hitting the middle of this order at a very cheap price tag. Ryan Noda is cheap. Those two from the left side in particular are interesting to me, just being able to take advantage of the short porch in Yankee Stadium. Brent Rooker's actually been hitting the hell out of the ball all season long, so certainly can throw him in there as like a 3-man. So I guess I'm more interested in Oakland than I typically would be in a team with a implied run total this low, but it's still more so just like grabbing individual guys here and there and hoping they get into one against Schmidt.
Thank you for not calling him former Minnesota Twin Brent Rooker this time. Appreciate you holding back on that. Stephen Lee Witz with the obligatory shout out to KBO DFS because we brought up Drew Rucinski. I don't think I've seen the name. I know who Drew Rucinski is. I know that he pitched in KBO just because literally every time the name comes up, that comes up that he was a KBO pitcher. I actually didn't play KBO DFS. I took a little time off. Yeah, most people did.
It did not go well.
As much as I am a DFS degenerate, I hate waking up early that much more. So that was what won out. It's like I'm not playing stuff that's in the middle of the morning.
Yeah, I didn't wake up early. I just went to bed at 5 a.m. every day.
Oh, that probably would have been the better approach for me if I had wanted to play it.
Yeah, I would set League of Legends lineups at like, whatever time that locked, 2 or 3 or 4, and then KBO would be like right after it.
Oh, does sound kind of fun in some ways. M the Great
Yeah,
says
and then there would always be one KBO game on ESPN, so then I would just turn the game on and fall asleep.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that we were actually. I suppose it makes sense. Like, there's no other sports on. You got to find sports where you can.
Yeah, and I mean it was fun too because like they would have like Adam Jones on the broadcast. They had legitimate broadcasting and stuff from their houses.
Is he retired now, Adam Jones?
I think so. He played in Japan most recently. I think he retired.
Okay. M the Great says won $1,000 over the weekend in PGA Showdown. Hell yeah! I've heard. So from what I've heard about PGA, there's much bigger edge on Showdown than the classic slates for
I've heard
PGA.
Yeah, I've never had success in Showdown. I haven't played it a lot, but
yeah, I have at all. And then Stephen Lee Wood says you need to do some course study on golf. Yeah, I've heard that before. From some of the better golf players that maybe course history, looking at studying the course a little bit could help there. And then I want to say Bruce Gant says, how do you use lineup generator? We will talk about that. I'm actually going to pull it up on my screen later and I will show you. It's not under the generator tab, it's under MLB. So if you go to stokastic.com, go to MLB, I think there's just a lineup generator option. Let me check real quick. All right, I already have it open. I think you just go to Stokastic MLB and then go to here. I'll pull it up here. MLB. Yeah, it's just under the MLB tab. MLB lineup generator is all you're looking for there to find the MLB lineup generator. Adam, how do you rank the 4 sides of this Oakland, New York game?
Yankees 1, Schmidt 2, A's bats 3, Rucinski 4.
Okay. This is the latest we've ever gotten through one game because we've talked about so many other things. So we will try to move on a little bit quicker. Boston at Atlanta, Nick Pivetta on the mound for the Red Sox, Charlie Morton for the Braves. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Some, 2 solid enough pitchers. Morton would be the one that I get to first at 8,900. Not a great matchup against the Red Sox. Also looks like it's supposed to be in the 80s today in Atlanta, so you are getting some warm weather peeping in, which is good for bats. As a result, only 6.5% ownership coming to Morton, 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. You're going to see a lot of arms like this pretty much always, but playable here and there in tournaments to help offset ownership in your lineup. But typically I'm going to end up getting to just higher projected pitchers, and Morton sort of middle of the pack. On the other side, not particularly interested in Pivetta. 7,200 is pretty cheap, but decent strikeout stuff. Also a problem limiting power. Not exactly the type of guy that I like taking against Atlanta. Since the start of last year, 211 expected ISO to righties, 176 to lefties. He's at 217 to lefties and 304 to righties so far this year. Does strike out around 23% of hitters from either side of the plate. So it's not like there's no upside for him here, but there's a lot of power in the Braves lineup, and they do have a 5.5 implied run total.
Okay. Moving on to the bats then. Any interest there?
Yeah, Braves look good. Pivetta just gives up power. Braves are at the top of the top stack stool, 11% top stack percentage, 11% ownership. They are relatively expensive, so that drives down their stack score a bit. They are probably going a little bit more over-owned than the Yankees, for example, even though the Braves have an 11% chance of being the top stack, 11% ownership. Yankees are 8-8. The Yankees are relatively going more under-owned, I think, just because they offer that value component as well. Whereas the Braves, you're actually sacrificing spots in your lineup, that you can't get to the best plays, whereas you can fit them in around the Yankees, for example. So not to say I don't like the Braves. They still grade out as one of the better stacks if you sort by stack score, which in the top stacks tool is the metric. We don't talk about it a lot, but metric that combines top stack percentage and top value percentage. So it gives you a little bit better idea. It's a little bit more useful than, I know I have a tendency sometimes on shows to be, oh, this team's going on their own because, they have a 6% chance of being the top stack and they're 2% owned. And it's like, well, every hitter in the lineup is $6,200. So there's a little bit more that goes into it. This helps to sort of quantify that. When you sort by that, the Braves are still coming in 5th. So even factoring in that they're expensive. They're coming in as the top. They're coming in as the best stack score amongst the teams that aren't really, really cheap. So, still like getting to them, but it just becomes a little bit more difficult. On the other side for Boston, they're middle of the pack as well. 6% chance of being the top stack, 4% ownership, 8th in or 7th, tied for 7th in stack score. I don't really like going up against Morton all that much. You do have some, solid hitters in the Red Sox lineup, but certainly prefer the Braves side.
Okay. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Braves 1, Morton 2, I guess Red Sox 3, Pivetta 4.
Okay.
They're
and
kind
yes,
of similar in that, like, if you're playing 150 lineups and you get like a little bit of Pivetta, fine. If you get some Red Sox, fine. But I would assume it's more likely that, like if you were to tell me that I end up heavy on either the Red Sox or Pivetta, I would assume it's the Red Sox.
Okay. Makes sense. And yes, Arnold Lane was asking if Adam got the home run pick. Yes, home run pick right. Yes, so yeah, you got it right with Gleyber Torres was Adam's home run pick there. I'm thinking so. Usually, I wait a little bit to do any of the like Stokastic reads until I've done the sponsor read because that's the most important one that I think that I need to make sure I do every day. But because we're talking so much about lineup generator, I kind of want to pull it up right now and I can show you guys where it is, how it works, all that kind of stuff. So let's just jump into lineup generator real quick, just so I can show it to you guys before we move on to the next game, because it's kind of exciting that we have this new. Oh yeah, here it is right at the top. There's a banner right there at the top of the page, but I'm going to find it by going to, probably if I click there it would work, but I'm just going to go MLB lineup generator. Simple as that on the Stokastic homepage. Adam, let's play. We're going to make lineups for DraftKings here. Any preferred stack type, Adam, or should we do all stack types? So the options are 5-3, 5-0, or 4-4.
Do all stack types. I just want to see what it like spits out.
Okay. What do you think? All lineups, chalky lineups, balanced lineups, or contrarian lineups?
Balanced is normally my preference. Baseball, you can certainly make the case for going contrarian more than like basketball.
Right. Any pitchers that you think we should be locking here?
No, just let it do its thing.
Okay. Skip that. All right, so the first lineup, we're seeing Eric Lauer and Logan Webb as the pitchers. Really, really contrarian Eric Lauer here. And then we're getting Atlanta and New York. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 5-3 Yankees stack with Atlanta. Looks like so it's a somewhat high-owned lineup in terms of batters, and then we offset that with the 1% Eric Lauer. What do you think?
I'll say like construction wise, it's not. I mean, it's not my favorite lineup because you have Eric Lauer against the Dodgers, but construction wise, it does work. Like you have a pretty popular team in terms of if you're just adding the ownership percentages together, but then a 1% Lauer is just going to kind of make it so if he pitches well, you're on your own. I do kind of typically prefer getting a couple of like low owned, higher probability guys as opposed to like the 1% owned guy. Right.
Yep, I agree. I think that this one is going to be for me a discard. It's you can see that it's on the very contrarian end of the scale. So these you can't. I was confused the first time I tried using the lineup generator for golf. You can't like adjust these. This is just showing you where the lineup falls in terms of projection and ownership.
I'm surprised it's so far to the right in contrarian. I guess it must be weighting product very heavily.
Yeah, I mean we've got Eric Lauer and then we've got Oswaldo Cabrera at 4%.
Yeah, I mean it's a perfectly playable lineup in terms of ownership. Like there's nothing crazy there.
Yeah, just not your favorite.
Yeah, like it's a good lineup. I could easily see that being in like a 150 set.
Okay, so I just did a new lineup, and you can see here it's way on the chalky end of the scale, and then still often also then of course on the optimal end of the scale. Now we've got Shohei Ohtani and Clark Schmidt as the pitchers, two of the higher owned pitchers on the slate, going with it must be a 5-3 stack because I see right away White Sox, Atlanta, Yankees. So it's a 5-man White Sox stack with just some one-offs of Fernando Tatis, Matt Olson, and Gleyber Torres. What do you think of this lineup, Adam?
I mean, it projects really well. So it's not like a crazy chalky lineup. You don't have any one guy that's like particularly contrarian. Alberto's the lowest owned guy at 5%. So it's probably a little chalkier than I would like, but
yeah, it's also maybe a smaller field GPP kind of lineup.
Yeah, like I could definitely see playing that lineup. I don't know that it would be one of my favorites in large field, but even at the same time, it's not like most of these guys are crazy on the pitching is popular.
Right.
The batters, you're talking 10% ownership. You're still talking about 90% of the field doesn't have any of the hitters.
Yeah, exactly. So it's perfectly viable lineup for sure. Projection a little bit better than the other one. I'm going to save this one, and we'll do a couple more. So this last one, close to the top. I mean, it kind of makes sense that all of these are going to project pretty well. They're probably not going to give you lineups that don't project well. But then, on the chalkier end, but not the far chalky end, we've got Shohei Ohtani and Clark Schmidt once again. I kind of wonder if just like having the chalk pitchers drives it to the chalky end of the board just because
Yeah, I
their
think
ownership
so.
is so high. Okay. So we've got Shohei Ohtani, Clark Schmidt, and then we've got a Yankees Dodgers. This 4-4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-4 stack with 4 Dodgers, 4 Yankees. So two of the better offenses in baseball. We've got a 5% owned DJ LeMahieu, 1% owned Trace Thompson, 5% owned Willie Calhoun. This one seems more like, I guess Trace Thompson is on the very low end of the ownership, but this feels more like you're getting more of those like kind of contrarian but not super contrarian guys in this lineup. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, kind of comparable to the one before, where you just have a bunch of like low double digit ownership coming into bats and then popular pitching. Um, I don't mind it. On a 10-game slate, it's not contrarian. Like, you're not gonna if this comes through, you're not gonna get that feeling where like you're smarter than everybody else because you hit on
Right.
some random team. But it's not overly problematic and it does project well.
Yeah, I don't mind this lineup. I think I'll save it. All right, George. This is the last one we'll look at. It's kind of interesting. George Kirby and Andrew Heaney. So we bring down the ownership of the pitchers a little bit, and then we've got what Yankees 5-0 Yankees stack looks like with Austin Slater, Luis Garcia, and who else is there? And Ronald Acuna as the one-offs. What do you think of this one, Adam?
Yeah, I like saving a little bit of ownership on the pitching. We like the Yankees. We just talked about them. Acuna is a really good one-off. Garcia is whatever. And who's the last one off?
Austin Slater.
Giants.
Yep.
Still. Yeah, sure. No real problems there. Like, he's not. I mean, he's not my favorite one-off because there's a good
Right.
chance he's going to get pinch hit for, but he does get to hit against Patrick Corbin a couple times.
Yeah, he's this is not my favorite type. So this is something that Peter Viles, Aha Bro, had said on High Stakes that he sometimes will, if there's going to be a chalky one-off who's largely chalky because of their price tag, he will often group them out, say only play them in groups. In this scenario in particular, where it's like a cheap chalky one-off, so Austin Slater maybe kind of qualifies there, but I feel like he's not the worst. Like he's actually a decent play here, I think. So I don't know that I would qualify him there, but I'm going to save
Yeah.
this one.
My bigger concern with Slater is just how many at bats does he get, and
Yeah, right.
like his expected at bats probably come down if the Giants as a whole aren't doing well, because like obviously if the team is hitting, you're getting back up to hit more often, but it also increases the likelihood that they're not trying to match up later and they just leave him in and he plays out the game. Whereas if this is a competitive game where his Giants teammates aren't doing that well, you're probably like trying to get a home run in his first 2 to 3 at bats and then not getting anything
Right.
else.
Yeah. So it's just some risk there with the pinch hit. All right, and then I'm just going to show you guys what happens. So now I'm just going to save the rest, and then if you save all your lineups, you will, once you get through, I believe 20 of them. Now you can see we've got, do I have 20 here? I might have I only have 19 lineups because there was one that we discarded, but then you can go back and get more lineups if you want them. But then you can see getting to 58% Shohei Ohtani. I like that. I don't think I'm going to want to have 58% Gleyber Torres, so maybe we need to be a little bit more discerning in our lineups than me just clicking buttons here. But getting to a ton of Yankees, more than 50% of a few of them. So again, you probably want to go back and like not just jam in. I mean, depends on the way you want to play it, the risk you want to take here. You can if you just want to play a bunch of Yankee stacks, but you can always go back and get more lineups before you export to CSV.
And also, like, if you get a lineup, let's say you really liked that final lineup that we had with Slater,
Yeah.
like you can also just manually turn Slater into somebody else.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You can export these and then just change out
I
individual
think you
bats
can
if
do
you
it in
don't
the
like.
tool, can't you?
Oh, can you? Maybe
I
you
don't know.
can.
There's arrows. I thought you could.
Oh, I'll double check that. I think you actually might be right. Yeah, you are right. So let's say you don't love David VR here. Now, how much does it tell me how much salary? So it looks like I would have 3,100 to spend here. So then I can go in and
Oh yeah.
go with Manuel Rivera. He's the only. Yeah. All right, that's easy, and then you can save that. That's cool.
Yeah, so like that, the lineup that we had before, not only did it have Slater, who we didn't love, I think it left like 1,400 on the table. So like that's a perfect example of just being able to say, okay, well, I can turn Slater into a real hitter.
Yeah, if you have 1,400 left over there to not play the chalky cheap guy, yeah, I would definitely have made that call. But yeah, looks this is cool. We've got so you can kind of see the ownership ranges from low one. Oh man, 91% ownership on this lineup. Lucas Giolito, Michael Wacha, interesting. Actually, kind of a wide range of ownership here, but projections all all above 100 looks like. So all well projected lineups. Yeah, kind of cool. Something that you should probably check out, the lineup generator. And then I suppose I should look up what the actual offer. I just want to check it out because this is my first time using lineup generator. I'm kind of excited about it. Had not looked at what we are actually offering for lineup generator. Okay, our all new MLB lineup generator is live. Use promo code baseball for all. So that's all caps. I don't know if it needs to be all caps, but it's the word baseball, the number 4, and then the word all. You get 50% off your first week when you sign up using the promo code baseball for all. So it's typically $8.95 per week, so you're going to be getting it for half off of $8.95. So basically, get $4.50 off for the first week if you use promo code baseball for all. That's a pretty nice price for it. Just making lineups for you. You don't have to put a ton of thought into it. You're going to get good lineups. We've already lineup generated. It's like any other sport. They've already weeded out the bad lineups for you. So every lineup that we are generating here is going to be a good balanced lineup. You choose the kind of balance you want. If you want it to be contrarian, if you want it to be, better projected, a little bit chalkier, you can kind of choose those options. And, there's no wrong answer because they have already weeded out all of the negative EV lineups. Every lineup that they give you is something that our simulations have found to be plus EV. So it's a really cool tool made by some of the best DFS players in the business. Highly recommend checking it out, and it does the work for you. It's just making lineups for you for just $9 a week. But again, you can get your first week for 50% off using promo code baseball for all. All right, we will move on, Adam, to the third game of the slate, which is did you ever rank the 4 sides of Boston, Atlanta?
Yeah, Braves, Morton, Red Sox, and Pavetta.
I remember it now. Okay. St. Louis at Chicago. We've got Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Cardinals, Jameson Taillon for the Cubs. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Not a ton. They're both middle of the pack guys. They're right next to each other in top pitcher percentage. It is interesting that you're getting 10% ownership coming into Flaherty and none coming into Taillon. Taillon is, I believe, 2 starts removed now from the injured list. Still probably not going super deep into this game. I still also don't love the matchup with the Cardinals, even though they haven't been very good so far this year. Looks like wind's blowing in Wrigley, but not very hard, 55 degrees. So should play pretty neutral. 8 total, 4.2 implied run total for the Cubs, 3.8 for the Cardinals. If you land on either of these guys in large field tournaments as a contrarian mid-range play, that's fine. But I wouldn't be going out of my way to get to either one. Flaherty, hasn't been the same strikeout pitcher since coming back from injury, or hasn't been the same pitcher in general. 23.5% strikeout percentage this year is fine. 14% walk percentage is not. 1.3 home runs per 9, 5.4 FIP. Still leaves a lot to be desired in terms of, being confident in him. Taillon's a solid enough pitcher. You do typically prefer him against right-handed bats, which is going to be the most dangerous bats in the Cardinals lineup, but they do mix in plenty of lefties to balance it out. So, yeah, not excited about either pitcher. They're both playable, but probably not too often.
All right, and then what about the bats?
Don't really love the hitting here too much. Flaherty has had power issues, like I was saying, and the Cubs do have some power. So far this year for Flaherty, a 176 expected ISO to lefties, 141 to righties. Since last year, 129 to righties, 172 to lefties. Ian Happ, Cody Bellinger, probably the first 2 spots I'd look to. You do still have a cheap Matt Mervis in there as well. Righties, Swanson, Suzuki, Wisdom. These guys have power, but not a great spot against Flaherty, I don't think. Right now, the Cubs coming in towards the bottom in stack score, 4th from the bottom. Cardinals are coming in 3rd from the bottom. So neither one of them look overly appealing. Neither one's getting ownership. That's like the one thing that makes them look kind of good, but neither one looks great.
Okay, and then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
I have no idea. Cubs, Cardinals, Flaherty, Taillon.
All right, perfect. Fanatic says, LOL works for the company and trying to sell a product he didn't even know about. Yeah, I mean, it came out this morning, so I've never used it, and it's we have a ton of great products. That's kind of part of working for this company is we have a lot of great products to offer. Once a new product comes out, that's when we're going to tell you about it right away. So I'm telling you about it. It just came out this morning. I'm telling you guys about Lineup Generator, and I'm looking at it for the first time. It looks really cool to me. But yeah, you should check out Lineup Generator. We do have a lot of other great tools as well if you want to check those out. But if you're looking for a simple way to make MLB DFS lineups, seems like kind of the simplest way to make great MLB DFS lineups. All right. Moving on to San Diego at Minnesota. We've got Michael Wacha on the mound for the Padres, Louis Varland for the Twins. Any interest in the pitchers here, Adam?
Not a ton. They're both cheap. That's pretty much all you have going for you. Padres, obviously, an offense you don't love taking pitching against. Varland does have quality strikeout stuff, and he is cheap, but I would certainly prefer him if he had a better matchup. 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 2% owned. So, again, going under owned, 15% chance of being a top 2 value as well. Going under owned, you can use him as that like Eric Lauer type play that we were just talking about with the lineup generator, so that it offsets the rest of your lineup. That's fine, but I wouldn't be doing it too often. On the other side, Waka, 7% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 2% owned. Very comparable play to Varland, where at low ownership, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, sure, maybe you get a little bit, but they're not guys I'd be building around or heavily prioritizing.
Okay. And then what about the bats in this game?
Yeah, I think the bats are somewhat interesting. It's two decent but not great pitchers. Padres coming in 5th in top stack score. They are pretty expensive, top stack percentage. They are pretty expensive. So in terms of stack score, they get knocked down to 7th, but still, top half of the field. They are pulling 9.5% ownership, so going a little bit over owned as well. On the other side for Minnesota, pretty much correct ownership, 5% chance to be in the top stack, 5% projected ownership. When you look at what these two pitchers have struggled with going back to last year, 238 expected ISO to righties for Varland. This is in a limited sample. Obviously, he was in the minors for most of last year, but kind of interesting that he's actually had issues with same-handed power. For Waka, that's something that's been the case like his entire career. And since the start of last year, a 210 expected ISO to righties with just a 17.5% strikeout percentage. So that's 6 points less than, or 6 points lower than the strikeout percentage is to lefties. Gives up some power to lefties as well. But Waka's always had a good changeup, and that's made him a little bit better, a little bit reverse splits for most of his career. So not saying that, like, if you're going to the Twins, you shouldn't play Kepler, Polanco, Kirilloff, or Gallo, but it does make you feel a little bit better than you already would about guys like Correa and Buxton. Similarly, on the Padres side, not saying, not to play Soto, Carpenter, Cronenworth, but you can feel a little bit more confident than you already would in guys like, Machado, Tatis, Bogarts, that, you're not playing them solely because in a very limited sample, Varland has had issues with right-handed power, but it doesn't make you feel any worse about it either.
Okay. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Padres 1, Twins 2, Varland 3, Waka 4.
Okay. Next up, we've got the White Sox at the Royals. Lucas Giolito on the mound for the White Sox. Jordan Lyles for the Royals. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Giolito, yeah. He's 3rd in top 2 pitcher percentage, only pulling 13% ownership. That is lower than every other pitcher in the top 6 in top 2 pitcher percentage. So kind of stands out. And it's not like it's a salary thing either. He's 8,300. So he's not super cheap, but he's not really expensive. He's $200 more than Heaney, getting basically half the ownership. He's $1,200 less than Webb, getting like half the ownership. He's $800 less than Kirby, getting less than half the ownership. Those guys are all pretty much in his price range. He's not as comparable to guys like Ohtani or Schmidt that are getting more ownership because, Ohtani's on a separate level than every other pitcher on the slate in terms of talent, and Schmidt is at a different price point. But it is interesting to me, Giolito is so much lower owned than these other pitchers. And I get has fallen off a bit. He's not the same pitcher we saw, a couple of years ago. So far this year, he has struck out 23.5% of hitters, 3.87 FIP. Last year was kind of the same thing where strikeout percentage fell off, but it's not like he became bad at getting strikeouts. He wasn't a bad pitcher. You have an okay matchup against KC in Kansas City. Does still look pretty warm there. Looks like it should be around 80. So it's just, can you kind of navigate the top of this order with Witt, Pasquantino, Perez, Melendez, and then take advantage of the weaker bats towards the bottom? At that ownership, though, I do like the idea of getting there in tournaments. On the Lyle side, I see no real reason to go there unless you're just like, you can make the case that a 1% owned Jordan Lyles is very under-owned compared to a 40% owned Schmidt, in that Schmidt's not going to beat him 40. He's not a 40x favorite, but
right.
That's not really how you're making lineups.
Right. All right. What about the bats in this game?
Still pretty interesting. Even though the park isn't great, you have a 4.8 implied run total for the White Sox. Lyles is essentially just an innings eater at this point in his career, a veteran presence for young pitchers. Since the start of last year, a 195 expected ISO to righties, 206 to lefties. He's been worse than that so far this year. The White Sox aren't the most appealing lineup, but they do still have some solid bats. Anderson, Benintendi, Vaughn, Robert, Sheets all have power. Grandal has some power as a catcher. So they look like a pretty solid stack. Second in stack score behind the Yankees. They are projected to be the highest owned team on the slate because they're pretty cheap. But again, that just, sort of the value component drives up ownership, but it also means you can build really high upside teams around them. So I like the White Sox quite a bit. On the other side for KC, I think in tournaments they're okay, but they are actually projected for 5.5% ownership. I think that's likely because of a couple of individual players. I'm double checking right now, but Kansas City is a team that I think a lot of time the aggregate ownership is going to be a little bit misleading because Bobby Witt is just like always going to be a great shortstop play. Melendez and Perez are always going to be good catcher plays, and Pasquantino is constantly underpriced. Looking right now, you have 15% ownership coming into Witt on DraftKings. Next highest is Perez at 9, Melendez at 7, Pasquantino at 6. So if you're just looking at the aggregate ownership in the top stacks tool, it would make you think that the Royals are going over-owned when in reality it's kind of just Bobby Witt, and Bobby Witt himself isn't going on over-owned. So KC looks okay, but you're certainly not going to be as confident in them in a matchup against Giolito as you would Chicago in a matchup against Lyles.
Sure. All right. How would you rank the four sides of the game?
Giolito, White Sox, Giolito, Royals, Lyles.
Larry says the Mets signed Twins legend Gary Sanchez. Interesting. I got to be honest. I didn't even know that he was no longer like on the Twins. I thought he was just like hurt or something. Did not realize that he was a free agent. He really fell off pretty quickly, didn't he?
Yes,
I feel like he was like a star just like 2-3 years ago. Now he's, man.
Yeah, he fell off real fast.
Yeah, sad. All right. And then, the other thing that I wanted to address real quick is who was it? Chad Joseph says, what's the best or better bets for parlays, home runs, or something else? I think it's strikeouts is my impression. Do you have any opinion there, Adam?
No, like I don't know. The only answer I would give you, and I don't even mean this like trying to sell stuff, like I use Odd Chopper when I bet, and it has all of the different types of props. It has your expected return, how likely you are to win, all of that.
Right.
So like I use that instead of sorting by a specific bet. It's just a really quick and easy way to see like, hey, these are all the bets I could possibly make. These are the ones that are likely to make me the most money.
Right. Yep. Me too. That's how I just start with. I've been doing prize picks. I just start with the NBA prize picks builder, prop tool, whatever on the site. And it's much easier for me to find positive EV bets that way rather than like going through individually different players. What are the props? So that's the best starting place for me. All right. We have we have Eric Lauer against the Dodgers. So we've got the Dodgers at the Brewers. Noah Syndergaard on the mound for the Dodgers. Eric Lauer for the Brewers. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Not particularly. I mean, you demonstrated the type of lineup where you could look to Lauer. 8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 1% ownership. So very low probability play, also under-owned technically. So that's the kind of lineup you would use him in here and there, but not anything I'm trying to get to. Very, very tough matchup against the Dodgers. Pretty middle-of-the-road pitcher. 21.5% strikeout percentage so far this year, 5.37 FIP. Nothing middle of the road about any of that. He's been actively bad, but typically for his career, he's been solid enough. On the other side for Syndergaard, I don't really think I need to get to him today. I typically never do. 5% ownership, about no ownership, 5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Doesn't get a lot of strikeouts anymore. Pitches to contact, tries to keep the ball on the ground. We just have better strikeout options on this slate.
Okay. And then what about the bats in this game?
Yeah, I am interested in either side offensively. You have a solid hitter's park in Milwaukee. 9.5 implied run total is, I believe, the highest on the slate. So 4.9 implied run total for the Dodgers, 4.5, 4.6 for the Brewers. Don't mind targeting bats against either one of these pitchers. Since the start of last season, 168 expected ISO allowed to righties for Lauer, 128 to lefties. As I said, this year he's been much worse so far. 212 to righties stands out in particular. But you're more so just banking on the Dodgers bats because they are a really good lineup. They are 6th in stack score. So again, that's even factoring in how expensive they are. They are getting some ownership as well. Milwaukee, middle of the pack in stack score. I'm going a little bit under owned. 5% chance of being the top stack, 4% projected ownership. Certainly don't mind getting to there against Syndergaard and just, hoping that your ball's in play, get through. You can steal some bases off of him potentially. I like both offenses here.
I forgot that's Syndergaard's thing, right? Is that he gives up a lot of stolen bases?
Kind of fixed it. I'm going to double check now. I thought he'd sort of figured it out, but it also could have been that JT Realmuto was his catcher in Philly and that fixed it. So far this year, he's allowed 9 stolen bases this year and 31 innings pitched. So whatever he briefly appeared to have fixed last year is gone.
Okay.
Even last year he was really bad, but maybe I'm just completely misremembering. I thought he was like really bad and then fixed it after he got to Philly, which again would just be having an insanely good catcher. But either way, he allowed 30 stolen bases last year. He's allowed 9 so far this year.
Okay. So not great. Did you already go over your interest in the bats?
No, I didn't.
All right.
Dodgers won. Oh, yeah, I did. I just didn't rank them.
Okay. Can you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Yeah, Dodgers 1, Brewers 2. I guess Lauer 3 and Syndergaard 4.
All right, perfect. We will move on to Houston at the LA Angels. First, though, I do want to show you guys, talk about our sponsor, SoRare, just a little bit. SoRare, of course, an NFT-based way to play fantasy baseball, really fun way to play. If you've been watching our streams, you're familiar with how it works at this point. You can either play the common contest, which you can see here. Actually, I played a common lineup this week, not a very good one, but you can play these common contests. And when you sign up for SoRare, you actually can right away get some common cards. So like they give you your option of common cards. This is where I kind of screwed up and didn't spend a lot of time picking through my cards. They give you a salary cap. You can pick cards based on that salary, and then that's just free. You can enter these common contests for free. So that's the one on the far right. Those are the common cards. They're not numbered. You can't sell those cards, but you can use them to enter free contests to then win cards that you can sell and win some nice prizes there. So it's free to get started at SoRare, but of course you can also do what I did, which is the 2 lineups on the left here. Those are my limited contests. Each of those cards numbered to 5,000, and then you can win some real money, win some great cards that you can then sell those ones. The ones that are numbered to 5,000, the limited cards, those you can actually sell on the marketplace, or you can use them as I'm using them here to enter some contests. Looks like I've actually got a so far competitive one here, Adam. The one that we built in the limited pro contest. Shane McClanahan off to got a nice start. Still 33. That's not like he absolutely crushed, but 33 points I'll take out of my starting pitcher. Did not have Spencer Strider, sadly, so we're going to count on Jordan Romano getting at least an appearance, hopefully to save one of his games. And then I just picked out, I think all of these bats had at least had 4 games. So it was just the Rays, the Yankees, the D-backs all had 4 games during this period. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go with the bats with the most games. Not the best correlation here. I don't think, we had 2 D-backs, I guess, so a little D-backs mini stack, and then just one-offs with Lau and Rizzo, and then with Lodolo also as a start later in the week. So we'll see. Hopefully this 2 starting pitcher lineup works out a little bit better than how I have been doing so far. I threw in a limited all-star lineup, but that's just because you get experience points when you actually use cards. So like if you enter cards in a contest, you get a little bit of a bonus going forward when you use that card again. So I just threw these random players into a lineup just to get some experience points for the players, but not the best lineup. They're probably not going to do all that great, but check out SoRare. Again, you can start for free. I put the link into chat. It's also in the description of this video. Really fun way to play some fantasy sports. All right, I
spent the entire time you were talking trying to find Syndergaard stolen base splits from last year, and apparently you can find splits on FanGraphs for like every stat you ever wanted except stolen bases allowed.
Ah, interesting. So I guess we'll never know. All right, Houston at LA. We've got Framber Valdez on the mound for the Astros, Shohei Ohtani for the Angels. So no, you can't play Shohei Ohtani as a batter today, just as a pitcher. Adam, any interest in Ohtani or Valdez?
Yeah, for 2 different reasons. For Ohtani, he's the top projected pitcher on the slate. He's first in top 2 pitcher percentage. Just looks really, really good. Tough matchup against Houston. That obviously works against him, and that's why he's not projected higher. But so far this year, striking out 38.5% of hitters. Obviously, great strikeout pitcher going back to last year as well. Since the start of last year, a sub 100 expected ISO allowed to righties, only 128 to lefties. 35% K percentage to righties, 33% to lefties. So again, he projects as the best pitcher on the slate, even with this matchup. If it were a worse team than Houston, he would just project better. So certainly very happy to get to him where I can. He is $2,000+ more expensive than pretty much every other pitcher that's getting ownership. 32% owned is the second highest on the slate behind Schmidt. But if you can get there, great. The other side here is kind of interesting. I understand why Framber Valdez is only pulling like 3% ownership, or I should say I understand why he's not popular, because he's only $900 less expensive than Ohtani, who gives you much, much better strikeout stuff. And Valdez is more expensive by over $1,000 than every other pitcher on the slate. So it's kind of just like a dead zone where if you can get to Valdez, you most likely can get to Ohtani. And in lineups where you can't get to Ohtani, you are going to have trouble getting to Valdez a lot of the time as well. So I get that, but he's a really good pitcher to only be 3% owned on a slate where Lucas Giolito is 13% and Andrew Heaney is 25%. Not to knock George Kirby, but he's facing the Rangers at 29%. It kind of stands out, how low owned Valdez is, given that he is a very good real life pitcher, not the best strikeout stuff. So far this year, he's striking out 25% of hitters. Last year, I think he was around 22.5, 23%, but very, very good at getting ground balls, very good at limiting power. Doesn't walk a lot of guys, typically can get pretty deep into games. So I do like him as a low owned tournament play. I just don't know how often in practice you're going to be able to get there because of the really awkward price point.
Yeah, it looks like Valdez has the third best leverage score on the slate, coming in at 3.5% ownership, 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Of course, he's expensive, so the value pitcher maybe not quite as good, but yeah, looks like an interesting option. What about the bats in this game?
Not much interest. I mean, the Astros are a good offense, and it's always appealing when they're not owned and they're facing a popular pitcher. But going after Shohei Ohtani on a 10-game slate probably isn't going to be the route that I take. And then similarly for the Angels, one knock against them is that you can't stack them with arguably their best hitter. Not only does that just suck because you're losing a hitter that you would like to roster, it also just limits the number of ways you can stack this team. So that combined with facing a pitcher in Valdez that really just does not give up power makes it pretty tough to get to either side. It is a favorable park for hitting as well. So they have that, both teams have that working in their favor, but overall I'd be surprised if I get too much in the way of hitting here.
Okay. And how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Ohtani won by a lot. Valdez 2, just like if you can get there in tournaments. And again, I'm not even saying that I will. I just think it kind of stands out that how low that ownership is, but I also kind of get why he's not popular. Angels 3, Astros 4.
Okay. We'll move on to the next game, Texas at Seattle. We've got Andrew Heaney on the mound for Texas, George Kirby for the Mariners. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Yeah, both of them. They're both getting a lot of ownership, probably a little bit more than I would have expected, but I do get it. Kirby's a good young pitcher. He's only struck out 17.5% of hitters so far this year, but that number should certainly come up as the season goes on. Not a good matchup against the Rangers. They have been extremely good offensively. Corey Seager should be back soon as well, but not expected back today as far as I know. Since the start of last season for Kirby, he struck out 23% of hitters, only walking 3.5%, 3 flat FIP, 3.5 xFIP. Like he's a good young pitcher for Seattle. Favorable pitcher's park as well, helps to limit power. 147 expected ISO to righties, 131 to lefties since last year. So Kirby does just look like a good option at 9,100. We just saw Logan Gilbert carve this team up with, I think, 10 strikeouts in 6 innings yesterday. Not to say that means Kirby's going to do the same thing. Gilbert does have better strikeout stuff for one, but it can be done. You do still have a pretty low implied run total here. Basically 3 for Texas, so even lower than it was yesterday against Gilbert. On the other side, Heaney, we know, is either going to strike you out or give up home runs to you. The park does suppress power, so that's good for Heaney. You have a 3.9 implied run total on Seattle. I like Heaney in tournaments just because of the strikeout upside. Since the start of last season, a 31.7% strikeout percentage overall for Andrew Heaney, second highest on this slate behind Shohei Ohtani. And obviously you're getting a substantial discount because Heaney's not the same level of pitcher as Ohtani. So far this year for Heaney, striking out 24.4% of hitters. That's more in line, I think, with what you expect going forward from Heaney, but still, plenty of strikeout upside there. He's giving up a lot of power as usual, over 2 home runs per 9 innings. It's a really scary spot to play a popular Heaney. I really prefer playing him when he's not popular because you're maximizing the upside from those strikeouts. Here, you're kind of like, if Heaney goes out and has a big game, you're still competing with a pretty high percentage of the field, around 25%, but he's so prone to getting blown up as well that he's kind of scary to get to at that ownership. It does make me like getting to some Seattle bats, even though it's not the best park. So far this year, a 235 expected ISO to righties for Heaney, only striking them out at a 21% clip, which is interesting because if you go back to the start of last year, he struck out righties at a 32% clip, but he's allowed a 188 expected ISO even since the start of last year. So even when his strikeout stuff is on, he's giving up a lot of power. But this year, he hasn't even been striking righties out at an above average clip, and he's still giving up a lot of power. So when you see a lineup here, that is going to have Julio Rodriguez, Ty France, Suarez, Hernandez, Murphy, Pollock, all from the right side. Jared Kelenic probably in there left-handed, certainly playable as well. Against a popular pitcher, I think this is a really interesting spot to go to in tournaments.
All right, so you kind of like Seattle as a contrarian stack. That's the top stacks tool looked kind of neutral, so not standing out, but you intuitively, it's one of those spots where you're thinking just intuitively you like them better than maybe the tools would suggest.
Yeah, when I look at the pitchers getting ownership today, so we'll say the top 6 and top 2 percentage: Ohtani, Webb, Giolito, Heaney, Kirby, Schmidt. The two that stand out to me as guys that I would be most interested in targeting with bats are Heaney and Schmidt. Schmidt obviously is hurt he's facing Oakland, so like that makes it a little bit less appealing. But those are the two where I look at it and I'm like, all right, I get it. They're getting ownership because they're good at getting strikeouts, but they also give up a shit ton of power, and they're both really popular. Like Giolito would be third out of that group because I think KC looks fine against him as well. Mm-hmm. But you're also getting, a lot less ownership to him than you are Heaney and Schmidt. So if I end up, once I make lineups, if I end up seeing that I'm going heavily against a popular pitcher, I would assume it's either with Seattle and or Oakland.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice leverage in the classic sense of the word spot, like not using the tool sense of the word, but like leverage against a popular pitcher. Yeah. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Took a sip of coffee and forgot who exactly was playing. George Kirby 1, Heaney 2, Mariners 3, Rangers 4. But again, that changes if you're specifically asking about like attacking what the field is likely to do. I think Seattle's really, really interesting.
Okay. 2 more games left on the slate. Before we talk about those 2 games, though, let me tell you real quickly, we've got a great deal going. We've had it all week with BetMGM. Where you can get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and your first bet covered up to $1,000 paid back in bet credits when you sign up, make a deposit, and make your first paid wager at BetMGM using the link in the description of this video or using promo code PlatinumSub. So if you're in a state that has legal sports betting, you can sign up for BetMGM. And for some reason you have not yet already signed up for BetMGM, please do use the link in the description of this video or use promo code PlatinumSub. It's as good as a deal as you're going to ever find anywhere because you're getting that first bet covered up to $1,000. It doesn't have to be $1,000. If you want to put $10 in, you're going to be covered up to $10. Whatever your first bet is, you're going to get that back in bet credits if you don't win the bet. If you win the bet, of course, you're just going to get the money that you won winning the bet, but some nice safety there with that first bet coverage. And on top of that, you get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, which is valued at around $120. Probably should be more, especially now that MLB Lineup Trainer just came out today. A lot of great tools that you can check out at Stokastic. That's a full month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You get that for free when you sign up for BetMGM using the link in the description. Of course, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, 2 games left on the slate, Adam. We've got Miami at Arizona first. Jesus Luzardo on the mound for Miami. Brandon Pfaadt for the Diamondbacks. Any interest in these pitchers?
Yeah, this is a weird price tag and also just a weird top pitcher score, I think. So we have Brandon Pfaadt with a 6.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I that's not crazy low, I guess, but like this is a highly regarded pitching prospect. I think it just seems like maybe it should be like a little, like maybe he's a little bit more likely to be successful here. This kind of reminds me of when we got the 4K Bryce Miller facing $5,500 Mason Miller, and like the expectation was just that they were going to be good point per dollar values, but that they could just go out there and put up big games like you saw from both of them that night. He has that type of stuff. He's made 5 starts at AAA this year. He made 10 starts there last year. Struck out 28.6% of hitters there this year, sub 6% walk percentage. Last year struck out 30.6%, sub 6% walk percentage. You can't read too much into actual like run prevention numbers at AAA because as far as I know, Arizona is still playing in a bunch of ballparks that rival Coors Field. Their AAA team, I mean. So
Yep.
you can't read too much into that, but the strikeout stuff was there. Like he's been good at not walking guys throughout the minors. He's been good at getting strikeouts. Zips projects him for a 24% K percentage in the majors, 5% walk percentage. The bat projects 20% strikeout percentage. As I said yesterday, whenever you look at the bat projections for prospects, you have to keep in mind that it just massively assumes they're all going to fail. So like 20% from the bat is kind of impressive because normally it's going to project like 16. So like he projects as a good pitcher. He's a top one. He's Fangraphs has him as the 15th overall prospect. I'm not sure where like MLB Pipeline has him, but has good stuff. Very good at missing bats, and he's $4,500, not getting much ownership. He's getting 6% ownership. Like I get that you're probably not going to need to pay all the way down to 4,500, but like this is one where why is Clark Schmidt 40% owned if Brandon Pfaadt is only 6 and he's $1,500 less? I get Oakland is a good matchup, but this pitcher Brandon Pfaadt is probably a better pitcher right now than Clark Schmidt is. He's less expensive. He's getting 1/6 to 1/7 the ownership. I think he's really, really interesting, especially if this ownership stays where it is. On the other side, Luzardo is a very high upside pitcher, not getting ownership as well. The matchup here is pretty tough against Arizona. You're going to have a lot of quality right-handed bats in that lineup. You have a 4.6 implied run total for the D-backs, but Miami has figured out how to put things back together for Luzardo since they acquired him from Oakland. 25.6% strikeout percentage for him so far this year. The strikeout stuff is there. He's only like 5% owned. I think in large field tournaments, he is a pretty interesting contrarian option. I'm mostly just confused why Brandon Pfaadt's not getting more ownership here.
All right. So you're sounds like you're pretty high on Brandon Pfaadt as a contrarian GPP play.
If the ownership holds how it is, I think so. Like it's not that I think he's super likely to do well. You still have a 4.4 implied run total for Miami. It's just we've talked about a lot of popular pitchers today that I think are good plays, but that I'm not super confident in. I don't hate the idea of being able to use the $4,500 guy who is just as talented as any of them and then just get whatever bats you want. Easy to pair with Ohtani too. Like when you look at the top pitchers tool, you kind of have Ohtani breaking away from everybody at the top. And then you just have Brandon Pfaadt, for example, 6.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Nick Pivetta is right below him at 6%. So from Nick Pivetta, who is 5th from the bottom in top 2 pitcher percentage today, to Logan Webb, who is 2nd, you're talking about a gap of 6% to 20%. So like, yes, Logan Webb is 3 times as likely to be a top 2 scoring pitcher as Nick Pivetta. That's not nothing, but it's not like you have multiple pitchers at the top. Even Ohtani's 26%. It's not like you have multiple pitchers at the top where you're looking at them like, they're Spencer Strider, or Jacob deGrom and saying like, oh, these guys are 40% to be a top 2 scoring pitcher. The range of outcomes is relatively flat here. And the idea that you can improve your lineup probably by just saving money and going down to Brandon Pfaadt and just getting the best hitting spots that you can while pairing it with Ohtani is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I also think it's harder to project like rookie pitchers because you have no idea what kind of the pitch count is. The upside is probably higher than typically for a pitcher that we have with a 6% chance of being the top pitcher or whatever it is. Definitely.
And he went 4 2/3 in his first major league start. He faced 23 batters. Wasn't limited really from that aspect. In that start, he threw 87 pitches. Like he got lit up. That was also a start against Texas, who has been great. 7 earned runs, 4 home runs, and 4 2/3. Like maybe that's why the ownership's relatively low is, people just aren't going to click that name, but he's certainly, at the very least, he is very underpriced from a talent standpoint. Like he is probably a more talented pitcher right now than Flaherty, Taillon, Lauer, Waka, and these guys are all, 6,600 to 7,800.
Interesting. All right. We have another game and a half to get through. So we can't just talk about Brandon Pfaadt for the rest of the show here, but I think you heard it here first. 6 scoreless innings, 10 strikeouts, going to get the win for Brandon Pfaadt today. Adam's calling it. What's your level of interest in the bats, Adam?
Some, just because with Fat, you do have an unknown pitcher. He's making his second major league start, and he sure as hell wasn't good in the first one.
Right.
So, getting to some Chisholm, some Arise, Soler, those guys are all fine. I'd like to be on one side of that game, I guess. Like, Miami right now is fourth in top stack percentage, or in stack score rather. 6.5% top stack percentage, 10% chance of being the top value, only 7% ownership coming into Miami. I guess this part's really weird to me. Like, I don't necessarily care which side of it I get, but if you're not going to be, if the field isn't playing the $4,500 top pitching prospect, you would think that they're loading up on the bats against him. And if they're not doing that either. So it's kind of like at 4,500, he's pretty likely to either succeed or Miami succeeds. Like, and neither
Right.
side's getting much ownership. So that's really interesting to me. On the other side, the Diamondbacks do have a lot of right-handed power. I do have a lot of respect for Luzardo as a pitcher. 160 expected ISO to righties since last year with a 28% K percentage. This year, he has had more power issues so far with a 212 expected ISO to righties. I don't mind taking some shots at Arizona, but they're towards the bottom in stack score when you factor in how expensive they are. They're not very popular, but this is a really, really interesting game to me, particularly the Brandon Pfaadt versus Miami lack of ownership anywhere.
John Marchese had asked, "Hey Neil, what do you think of Florida one-offs and who?" And I think you're the better person to answer that question. Any Florida Marlin one-offs that you like?
I mean, in this situation, I think you're just going to the best hitters on Miami. So Jazz Chisholm would be one. Soler, Arise are probably 2 and 3. Because basically the way I'm viewing this is we don't have really any info on Brandon Pfaadt. You can't look at it yet and be like, oh, like he's a good pitcher overall, but he does give up, power to lefties or something. Like, he probably will. Most right-handed pitchers do to some extent. But I'm viewing it more as like, this is a really talented young pitcher. And if he's got his normal stuff, I'm going to just bet on it. And I have to take somebody from Miami. I'm going to just bet on the best hitters they have, which, is Chisholm, Arise, Soler. If he doesn't have his best stuff, then you're just talking about Miami top to bottom going off at low ownership.
Right. All right. Good point. All right. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
I have no idea here. For completely different reasons than the St. Louis game where I didn't really like much of anything. At current ownership, I like Brandon Pfaadt, I think, the most. I'll go D-backs 2, Miami 3, Luzardo 4, but I really like all 4 sides of this game to some extent because Pfaadt and Luzardo just aren't getting any ownership despite being really talented. The Diamondbacks and the Marlins aren't getting much ownership either, despite the volatile pitchers they're facing also not getting ownership. So I don't know. I like getting to this game in tournaments in general.
Okay.
And
Carter
probably like none of it in cash games.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Carter asked, "Do you guys have an app? Would love to sign up." We don't have an app. A lot of the tools are optimized for a phone. Like, I believe, at least my understanding is that lineup generator is something you can use on your phone without issue. I do everything on the computer, so it's stokastic.com is the website. You can find all of our tools on stokastic.com. So yeah, no app, but we are largely optimized for being used on the phone, but not all tools, I don't think. Generally, if you want to use Stokastic tools, though, I'd suggest doing it in a web browser. Would you agree with that, Adam? Yeah. All right. And then Arnold Lane asks, is Fat's 4 home runs in 4 innings last start an issue for being low owned? Like, are you concerned about? I mean, you kind of explained pretty well, I think, your position that, like, yes, it is, but if it's going to drive down ownership, you're going to probably attack both sides of that game.
Yeah, like I think it's a likely reason that he's expected to be low owned. I don't think you should be taking anything away from it because, like, just because he gave up 4 home runs to a really good Texas offense in his major league debut, it's not like that's predictive of what's going to happen going forward. And it really shouldn't tell you anything more than young pitcher with no major league experience is really volatile. Like, that's pretty much going to be the case for everybody. So, yeah, it's not something that I'm looking at as like a red flag. The guy struggled in his major league debut against one of the best offenses in baseball. It
Right.
happens. It's not like he doesn't have elite stuff. He does. MLB Pipeline, by the way, has him 51st in their top 100 prospects. So still, firmly in the top 100 prospects, just not as high as FanGraphs has him. But either way, looks like a very good prospect.
All right. We do have one more game to get through, and then we do have in 15 minutes, we've got the PGA Rainmakers show coming up with Greg and Jeff Ulrich. So you guys are going to want to stick around for that one. Not on this exact show. You're going to have to, it's going to be a new show, but on this channel. But we have to get through one more game, that being
good
Washington.
comp from SMP. Fat kind of reminds me of, he's similar to Heaney, where like the strikeout stuff, but it's different than Heaney because like Heaney's getting the ownership. But in this one, it's a similar matchup where like either Brandon Fat is pitching well and getting strikeouts at 4,500 and low ownership, or he's getting lit up by the unknown team on the other side. With Heaney, it's similar where he's either racking up strikeouts or he's getting lit up by Seattle. But at least in Heaney's case, like people are rostering him for his strikeout potential.
Right. All right. Final game of the slate, we've got Washington at San Francisco. Patrick Corbin on the mound for the Nationals. Logan Webb for the Giants. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Webb, certainly good matchup against the Nats. Not a great strikeout matchup, but a good pitcher. Not a great strikeout pitcher. Good real life pitcher in Webb. The Nats, a below average offense. Not again, not a lot of strikeouts, but not a lot of run scoring there. 22% strikeout percentage since the start of last year for Webb, 3.23 FIP. We have him second in top two pitcher percentage at around 20%, 22% ownership. So he looks pretty good. Patrick Corbin, not particularly interested. I will say that I got to a good amount of Corbin last start, and I'm pretty sure that came through for me. It wasn't something I planned on. It was just he's cheap and not getting ownership. I assume today my he's cheap and not getting ownership guy ends up being Fat unless that changes. But, unless the ownership changes. But Corbin's been weird the last couple of years. Like he's gotten lit up. He's been one of the most appealing guys to take hitters against, but a lot of his underlying stuff has suggested that he's gotten pretty unlucky. It's been going on long enough that I think Corbin's just not very good, but there's probably a little bit more left in the tank than people give him credit for. All that being said, I still don't plan on playing him tonight. Hopefully I don't.
Okay. What about the bats?
Interested in the Giants side in particular, third in top stack or in stack score, 7% chance of being the top stack, 11% top value percentage, 11% ownership. You do run into the issue that we were talking about with the lineup generator earlier, where stacking the Giants against left-handed pitching is a little bit problematic and annoying because they have a lot of good left-handed hitters ready to pinch hit, and they're a team that likes to match up. So like you're going to probably get Austin Slater starting this game but not finishing it. You could get David VR starting this game but not finishing it. Flores, Haniger, Estrada, Davis, relatively safe. Still, if it's like a huge situation and they have, Jock Peterson on the bench, they could pinch it for like Flores, but against a righty. But I think those guys are a little bit safer. They do get plenty of at-bats against right-handed pitching. Slater and VR are the ones in particular that I always have trouble with trying to figure out what to do with them because on the one hand, they're cheap and they're in a good spot. On the other hand, they're going to be popular because they're cheap and it's unlikely that they're finishing the game out. So it makes it kind of tough, but the Giants overall do look pretty good here against a pitcher in Corbin that, like I said, maybe not as washed as people give him credit for, but still like 225 expected ISO to righties, 389 expected ISO to righties since the start of last year. There is still plenty of upside there.
Are there any other teams that rival the Giants in terms of pinch hit risk?
Right now, I don't really think so.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of any.
The Dodgers, Tampa Bay, Oakland, these have been teams within the last 5 years that you kind of ran into this issue with at times. But San Francisco, I think, is the one doing it the most right now.
Okay, yeah. And then I actually wanted to ask you this question that Kevin OS, Neil and Adam, do you ever factor in umpire stats? Do you factor in umpire stats, Adam?
So that was a thing, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, it became like a small group of people decided that it was like the biggest edge to be had in MLB DFS and then just got completely overblown like immediately. It should be baked into projections, like the actual umpire, but then also it's going to influence the line at least a little bit.
Right.
Like Bill Miller is always one of the most pitcher friendly umpires. If you get a game that normally is going to be like an 11 total and you have Bill Miller, you're probably going to end up getting like a 10.5 or a 10 total. So it's going to naturally be baked in a little bit. So yeah, long answer or long way of saying no, I guess. But yes, it's factored in, but no,
indirectly.
Right. I'm not like I'm not making lineups, seeing what stacks I have, and then going like, oh shit, this umpire.
Right, because it should be like I would assume it is factored into the Vegas line as you said, like, and that's the Vegas line affects projections, so it's indirectly we are factoring in. But like if you use projections and then go back and say, oh, but I want to make adjustments, then you're going to be double counting because it should already be factored into projections.
I kind of think of umpires the same way that I was talking about whichever young pitcher it was with reverse splits earlier. Like I'm not going out of my way to target like same-handed hitters against them just because they have reverse splits in a small sample, but it certainly makes me feel better about playing them. If I'm getting a lot of an offense and I look and see they have a hitter-friendly umpire, I certainly feel better about it, but I'm not like changing stuff up.
Yep, makes sense. And then how would you rank the four sides of this final game?
Webb, Giants, Corbin, Nats.
Okay. All right, we need to do our final close it out with our favorite stacks, pitchers, and then home run picks. Yeah, good to see that. Larry says that the generator does work good on mobile, so you can check that out, Carter. All right, Adam. So you're doing 3 stacks in a 3 max contest. You want to do 3 different stacks. Where are you going?
Yankees, Marlins, Mariners.
Okay. 3 favorite pitchers today.
Ohtani. I like Giolito in tournaments just because he's getting less ownership than every other comparable pitcher around him. And I like Brandon Pfaadt because he's just not getting ownership right now.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering if you were going to go to Pfaadt there after you spent so much time talking about him.
Yeah,
I figured you'd probably go there.
It's kind of tough to answer this one on a slate like this. Like favorite pitchers, if I'm like building a cash lineup, I would assume that it ends up being like Ohtani Schmidt or Ohtani Webb, depending on what hitters I can get to, possibly Ohtani Kirby. Like it's in that range, but the field just has a lot more confidence in some pitchers today than I do. So it strikes me as one where maybe I'm going to be getting some, Ohtani Giolito pairings or Ohtani Fad pairings to offset some ownership.
Right. Okay. And then wait, did you do stacks already? Yes, you did stacks first. You did pitchers. Okay, we're ready for home run picks. All right, Adam, who is your home run pick today?
Anthony Rizzo.
Damn it. I was going to go to Rizzo. All right, let me see if I can find somebody else here.
I'll take Chisholm then if you want Rizzo.
All right, perfect. You take Chisholm. I'll take Rizzo. All right, Adam, do you have any final thoughts?
I will have baseball and basketball articles out shortly. I'll have my Bet Pro video out shortly, and I will be back at gonna guess 7:30 with I'm gonna guess Lofty, and both of those things can be completely wrong.
Oh, is it super late tonight? I'm on the show. Pretty sure I'm on live before lock tonight too.
I meant 5:30. Game probably starts at 7:30.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys very much for watching. Again, if you haven't hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. At the very least, please do like the video. Helps us out quite a bit. Thank you very much for watching. And again, in 6 minutes now, we're going to have Greg and Jeff Ulrich doing the PGA Rainmakers show. So check that out as well. And yeah, we will see you tonight on the NBA shows. Good luck.
5:30, me and Josh.
Perfect. And then me and Greg, I think, after that. So we'll see you there.